Hi, I'm Creed with Homebuyer University. Let's agree up front. It's absurd to try to get through the Colorado contract to buy and sell real estate, residential, as approved by the Colorado Real Estate Commission, part of the Department of Regulatory Agencies in Colorado, in 5 minutes. But I'm going to do it for you anyway. And we're going to start with paragraph 3. Paragraph 3 attaches to all the other parts of this contract right here. Whenever you see this little symbol and that number, that means that is the paragraph and subparagraphs that each of these requirements are attached to. But let me give you an idea on how this works. There's a deadline for something. Then there's going to be an objection deadline, which is the time by which you must tell the seller in writing if you have a problem. Then there's going to be an additional deadline that you and the seller have to reach a written agreement to the terms of your objection and how they're going to resolve that. If you don't do that by this specific date, it drops dead. Usually, be careful. You have to read every paragraph. There's 19 pages in this contract. And by the way, there are 14,519 words in this contract. Pretty much all of the remainder of this grid, paragraph 3, works very similarly to what we just talked about. Somebody has to do something, somebody has to acknowledge if they accept it or reject it, and then you have to work out a resolution, all by specific dates in these blanks. Let's talk about the blanks. There are 302 blanks or check boxes in this contract. If any deadline blank, that would be anything like this, dates and deadlines, is left blank or completed with NA or the word deleted, such deadline is non-applicable. Let's stop right there for 1 second. What that means is if you had left this blank or NA or non-applicable, you waived your right to get an appraisal on the property. The other thing you need to acknowledge is, let's say you've done the appraisal and your appraisal deadline, objection deadline, occurs. If you have not gotten a document back to the seller by this specific date, that means you've waived your right. You've again agreed to purchase that property regardless of what it appraised for. And then on the appraisal resolution deadline, if you met these first two requirements and then you had the resolution deadline come up, if you and the seller can't come to terms on that by this specific date and time, in this case, the actual contract terminates on its own. Keep in mind, something similar happens for everything in this grid, and everything in this grid is associated with a specific paragraph in the contract. Now, I'm going to scroll down this contract rapidly. Again, this is 19 pages, 14,519 words. The majority of those words are committing you and the seller to specific actions and meeting or not meeting those as very specific consequences, typically spelled out directly in this contract. Once you sign this, you are solely responsible for ensuring all of this happens. Let me show you. We're going to stop right here on paragraph 8 for a second because that's associated to one of the fill in the blanks up at the top. Again, look at how long this is and all the complicated terms within it. Let me show you how seriously these little blanks and check boxes are, along with every term in here. Page 11, except as otherwise provided in this contract, buyer acknowledges that seller is conveying the property to buyer as is, where is, with all faults. This is why every blank and every date and every time and every deadline is vital. Otherwise, that's how you're buying the property. Page 14 has, and I counted them all for you, 53 of these check boxes and blanks to be filled in. Each one of those is a commitment from you, a decision, a commitment, and a requirement, and it's part of a legal document once you've signed it. Let me show you how serious that can be. If required, withholding does not occur, the buyer could be held liable for the amount of the seller's tax, interest, and penalties. Page 17, the reason you have all those blanks, check boxes, let's look at page 17. This is your entire agreement. Now, over time, you might negotiate, have counteroffers, You might have addendums, you might have inspection resolutions, those sort of things attached to this. But at the time you sign this document, this is it, the entire agreement. This contract, its exhibits, and specified addenda constitute the entire agreement between the parties relating to the subject hereof, the property and everything in this contract, and any prior agreements pertaining thereto, whether written or oral, have been merged and integrated. What that means is anything you've talked about verbally with your broker, the seller, or anybody else involved in this doesn't count unless it's buried in here. That's not legal advice, but that's essentially what this is saying.